There's a moment in every man's life when he realizes that the loudest voices in the room are often the weakest. The ones who scream the loudest have the most to hide. The ones who gossip the most have accomplished the least. And the ones who try hardest to tear you down are the same ones who secretly wish they could stand where you stand. This is a story about power. Not the kind that comes from money or titles, but the kind that comes from within. It's about a man who learned that silence can be more devastating than any comeback, that indifference can be more powerful than anger, and that sometimes the best response to chaos is to simply keep building while others keep talking. What you're about to read isn't just a story. It's a blueprint for anyone who's ever been criticized, gossiped about, or attacked by people who don't matter. It's about the moment when a man stops defending himself and starts letting his results speak louder than any words ever could. Marcus Chen sat in his office on the 42nd floor, looking out at the city below. The view was spectacular, but he wasn't seeing it. His phone had been buzzing all morning with messages from concerned friends, business partners, and even a few reporters. Someone had started a rumor about him, and it was spreading fast. The accusation was simple but damaging. They said he had cut corners on his last real estate project. They said he had bribed city officials. They said he was corrupt. None of it was true. But in the age of social media, truth didn't matter as much as the story. And this was a good story. A wealthy developer accused of corruption. People loved that narrative. His assistant, Jennifer, knocked on the door and entered without waiting for a response. She'd been with him for 8 years and knew when he needed space and when he needed updates. This was an update moment. Marcus, the PR team wants to issue a statement. They've drafted 3 different versions. Legal wants you to sue for defamation. Your brother called again. He's worried about how this affects the family business. And she hesitated. And what? Marcus asked, still looking out the window. Channel 7 wants an interview. They're saying if you don't respond, it looks like you're guilty. Marcus finally turned to face her. At 45, he had built 3 successful companies, employed over 2,000 people, and donated millions to local charities. He had never cut a corner, never bribed anyone, never done anything he couldn't defend in court or in public. But here he was, being tried in the court of public opinion by anonymous accounts on social media and ambitious journalists looking for their next big story. Tell PR to stand down. Tell legal I'm not suing anyone, and tell Channel 7 I'm not interested, Marcus said calmly. Jennifer's eyes widened. Marcus, you have to respond. Silence makes you look guilty. Does it? He asked. Or does responding make me look defensive? He stood up and walked to his desk where 3 different newspapers lay open. Each one had a different angle on the story, but they all quoted the same anonymous source. That told him everything he needed to know. This wasn't journalism. It was a coordinated attack. Who started this? Jennifer asked. Marcus smiled slightly. He knew exactly who started it. Thomas Rodriguez, a competitor who had lost the bid on the last 3 major projects to Marcus's company. Thomas was old money, the kind that believed success should be inherited, not earned. He had been in the industry for 30 years and couldn't stand that Marcus, the son of immigrants who had started with nothing, was now outperforming him at every turn. It doesn't matter who started it, Marcus said. What matters is how we respond. But we're not responding, Jennifer said, confused. Exactly. Over the next few days, the story grew. More anonymous sources came forward. Social media exploded with opinions. Some people defended Marcus, pointing to his track record and charitable work. Others assumed he was guilty simply because he was wealthy. The loudest voices, as always, were those who had accomplished the least. People with no business experience, no understanding of construction or development, felt qualified to judge him because they had an internet connection and an opinion. Marcus's phone continued to buzz with advice. His lawyer wanted to take action. His PR team wanted to get ahead of the narrative. His friends wanted him to fight back. Even his mother called from Florida, worried that her son was being destroyed in the media. But Marcus did something that confused everyone. Nothing. He went to work every day. He attended meetings. He reviewed blueprints for the new community center his company was building. He had lunch with his team. He went to the gym. He had dinner with his daughter. He lived his life as if the storm swirling around him didn't exist. His brother David couldn't understand it. They met for coffee on a Tuesday morning, and David came armed with articles, social media posts, and a list of demands. "You need to respond," David insisted. "This is getting out of control." People are starting to believe this garbage. What people? Marcus asked calmly. Everyone, it's all over the news. No, I mean specifically, what people? Name them. David paused. Well, the media, social media, people online. So strangers who don't know me, competitors who don't like me, and journalists who need a story. Anyone else? Our clients might start to worry. Have any clients cancelled? Well, no, but have any clients even mentioned it? In fact, their existing clients seemed unbothered. People who actually knew Marcus and had worked with him weren't questioning his integrity. It was only the people who didn't know him who were convinced he was guilty. That's my point, Marcus said. The people whose opinions actually matter. The people who work with me, do business with me, know me personally. They're not buying this story. Everyone else? They don't matter. But your reputation. My reputation isn't built on what strangers think about me. It's built on what I do, the results I deliver, and how I treat people. No amount of gossip changes that. David leaned back in his chair, studying his younger brother. You're really not going to do anything? I'm doing something, Marcus replied. I'm continuing to build. While they talk, I work. While they gossip, I deliver. While they try to tear me down, I'm constructing the largest affordable housing project this city has ever seen. That's my response. The conversation reminded Marcus of something their father used to say. Their father, who had immigrated from Taiwan with nothing but a suitcase and a dream, who had worked 3 jobs to put his sons through school, who had built a small but successful restaurant business despite facing racism and skepticism at every turn. He used to tell them, when dogs bark at you on the street, you don't stop to argue with them. You keep walking. Eventually, they stop barking and you're still moving forward. At the time, Marcus thought it was just his father's way of dealing with discrimination, but now he understood it was something deeper, a philosophy about power and how to wield it. Real power wasn't about controlling what people said about you. It was about controlling yourself, your actions, your focus. Everything else was noise. That afternoon, Marcus had a meeting with the City Planning Commission about the affordable housing project. As he walked into City Hall, a reporter intercepted him with a camera crew. Mr. Chen, can you comment on the allegations? Marcus didn't stop walking. He didn't say no comment. He didn't look angry or defensive. He simply smiled slightly and continued into the building. The reporter shouted a few more questions, but Marcus was already gone. The footage would air that night, but all it would show was a man who seemed completely unbothered, which frustrated the reporter more than any angry response would have. The meeting went well. The commission approved the project unanimously. 3 commissioners specifically mentioned Marcus's reputation for quality and integrity. If they had heard the rumors, they didn't seem to care. They judged him on his work, not gossip. As Marcus left City Hall, he noticed Thomas Rodriguez in the lobby. Their eyes met for a brief moment. Thomas looked away first. That told Marcus everything. The person who attacks anonymously, who spreads rumors in the shadows, is always the person who can't compete in the light. Thomas couldn't beat Marcus in legitimate competition, so he tried to destroy him through gossip. But gossip only works if the target responds, if they show weakness, if they give it energy. Marcus did none of those things. He simply acknowledged Thomas with a slight nod. Not friendly, not hostile, just acknowledgement, and walked past him. It was the response of a man who didn't see Thomas as a threat, which was more devastating to Thomas's ego than any angry confrontation would have been. That evening, Marcus had dinner with his 15-year-old daughter Sophie. She had seen some of the social media posts at school. Kids her age lived on social media, so there was no escaping it. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked over pasta. "I saw what people are saying online. I'm fine, sweetheart. How are you? But they're saying terrible things about you. Don't you want to tell them they're wrong?" Marcus put down his fork and looked at his daughter. This was an important teaching moment. "Sophie, let me ask you something. Do you believe what they're saying?" "Of course not." "I know you. You're the most honest person I know. And your mum? Does she believe it?" "No way. Your Uncle David? Your grandma? Your friends who actually know me? No. None of them believe it. So the people who actually know me don't believe the rumors. The only people who believe them are strangers who don't know me at all. Now, whose opinion matters more to you? People who know you or strangers who don't?" Sophie thought about it. People who know me. Exactly. So why would I waste my energy trying to convince strangers who have already decided to believe gossip instead of facts? I can't control what people think about me. I can only control my actions. As long as the people I love and respect know the truth, that's all that matters. But isn't it hard? Don't you want to defend yourself? Marcus smiled. You know what's funny? The people attacking me are spending hours of their day thinking about me, talking about me, trying to bring me down. Meanwhile, I'm spending my time building things, helping people, and having dinner with my daughter. Who do you think is winning? Sophie smiled back. She understood. The power wasn't in responding, it was in not needing to. As Marcus drove home that night, he thought about power and how people misunderstand it. Most people think power is about dominance, about making others submit, about winning arguments and crushing enemies. But real power is quieter. It's the ability to remain calm when others are in chaos. It's the discipline to focus on what matters while ignoring what doesn't. It's the confidence to let your work speak for you instead of having to constantly defend yourself. The rumors would continue for a while. He knew that, but he also knew they would eventually fade. Rumors always do. The news cycle moves on. Social media finds a new target. The loudest critics get bored and find someone else to attack. But his buildings would still be standing, his businesses would still be running, his relationships would still be intact, and he would still be moving forward while his critics stayed exactly where they were, anonymous, insignificant, and increasingly irrelevant. That night before bed, Marcus opened his journal and wrote something his father had once told him, something he now fully understood. A lion doesn't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. It wasn't about arrogance, it was about priorities. It was about understanding that you can't please everyone, and trying to do so is the fastest path to losing yourself. As he closed his journal and turned off the light, Marcus felt something his critics would never feel. Peace. Not because he had won some argument or destroyed his enemies, but because he had maintained his integrity, his focus, and his dignity. In a world obsessed with reactions, he had discovered the power of non-reaction. In a culture that demanded responses, he had found freedom in silence. And in an environment where everyone was shouting, he had learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply keep building while letting them talk. 3 weeks passed and the rumors hadn't died down. If anything, they had intensified. Thomas Rodriguez hadn't expected Marcus's silence, and like most bullies, the lack of reaction only made him push harder. New evidence appeared. Doctored emails, out-of-context quotes, and carefully edited photos that suggested impropriety where none existed. The media loved it. Controversy sold papers and generated clicks. Several news outlets ran investigative pieces that were more speculation than investigation. They interviewed experts who had never met Marcus but were happy to analyze his business practices based on rumors. Opinion columnists wrote think pieces about wealth and corruption using Marcus as their example despite having no actual evidence against him. Marcus's board of directors called an emergency meeting. 10 successful business people sat around a conference table, and most of them were nervous. Not because they doubted Marcus, but because they understood business. Perception mattered. Stock prices could drop based on rumors alone. Investors could get scared. Partners could distance themselves. Marcus, we need to address this, said Patricia Wong, the board chair and a veteran of 30 years in corporate America. Our shareholders are asking questions. Some of our partners are getting cold feet on future projects. You can't just ignore this forever. Marcus looked around the table at faces he had known for years. These weren't strangers on social media. These were intelligent, accomplished people whose opinions he respected. But even they didn't fully understand what he was doing. Patricia, let me ask you something, Marcus began. How many projects have we completed successfully? 43, she answered immediately. How many times have we been sued for negligence or fraud? Never. How many times have any actual authorities, the police, the SEC, the FBI, anyone with actual investigative power, contacted us about these allegations? They haven't. Exactly. Because there's nothing to investigate. This isn't a legal problem. It's not even a business problem. It's a perception problem, and perception problems only become real problems when you give them credibility by responding to them. But the media, another board member started. The media will move on, Marcus interrupted gently. They always do. There will be another scandal next week, another target, another story. If I respond now, I extend the news cycle. I give them more content. I validate their narrative. The moment I defend myself, I've already lost because I'm playing their game by their rules. So what's your strategy? Patricia asked. Just wait it out? Not just wait it out, build through it. We have the community centre breaking ground next month. We have the affordable housing project starting construction. We have the expansion into 3 new cities. While they're talking about me, I'm actually doing the work they're accusing me of not doing properly. The truth will prove itself through results, not press releases. An older board member, Richard Santos, who had been silent until now, spoke up. I've been in business for 40 years, Marcus. I've seen careers destroyed by less. Are you sure about this approach? Marcus met his eyes. Richard, let me tell you what I'm sure about. I'm sure that responding to liars makes you look like you're on their level. I'm sure that defending yourself to people who have already decided you're guilty is a waste of time. I'm sure that the people who actually matter, our employees, our clients, our real partners, aren't asking these questions because they know us. And I'm sure that the best way to defeat a lie is to keep telling the truth through action. Richard leaned back in his chair and after a long moment smiled. Your father would be proud. He dealt with worse than this and never flinched either. The meeting ended with the board reluctantly agreeing to follow Marcus's lead. But not everyone was convinced. Over the next few days, 2 board members quietly resigned, citing strategic differences. The media reported it as rats leaving a sinking ship. Marcus accepted their resignations without drama and replaced them within a week with 2 executives who understood his vision. The real test came when one of his major investors, a venture capital firm that had backed his last 3 projects, requested a meeting. Marcus knew what was coming. They were going to pull out. The managing partner, Andrew Chen, no relation, arrived at Marcus's office looking uncomfortable. Marcus, you know I've always believed in you, Andrew began, which was always a bad sign. Sentences that started that way usually ended with betrayal. But your firm is pulling out, Marcus finished for him. Andrew looked relieved that he didn't have to say it. Our partners are concerned. Not about you personally, but about the optics. We have other investments, other stakeholders. This situation creates risk exposure for us. How much are we talking about? Marcus asked calmly. 12 million. We'd need to see it returned within 90 days. $12 million. It was a significant sum, but not catastrophic. Marcus had built his businesses on the principle of never being over-leveraged, never being dependent on any single source of capital. His father's lesson again, never put yourself in a position where someone else's fear can destroy your dreams. You'll have the full amount in 60 days, Marcus said, with interest. Andrew blinked, surprised. You're not going to try to convince me to stay? You've made your decision based on what you think is best for your firm. I respect that. But I want to be clear about something, Andrew. 5 years from now, when my company is twice the size it is now, when these projects are completed and profitable, when everyone has forgotten this manufactured scandal, remember this moment. Remember that you had a choice between standing with someone you believed in or running because of optics. Andrew left looking troubled. He had expected Marcus to beg, to offer concessions, to show weakness. Instead, he had encountered certainty and strength. It made Andrew question his own decision, which was exactly Marcus's intent. That afternoon, Marcus called his CFO. We need to liquidate 12 million in assets. I want it done cleanly, quietly, and quickly. That's going to hurt our cash position, his CFO warned. Short term, yes. But I'm not staying in business with people who bail at the first sign of trouble. We'll rebuild that capital from partners who actually believe in what we're doing. You're not worried about this situation getting worse? Marcus thought about the question. Of course he had moments of doubt. Of course there were nights when he lay awake wondering if he should have handled things differently. But doubt and fear were emotions, and emotions were temporary. Principles were permanent. Here's what I know, Marcus told his CFO. We've done nothing wrong. Our work speaks for itself. The people attacking me have accomplished a fraction of what we've accomplished, and history shows that talent and results always outlast gossip and rumors. I'm not worried. I'm focused. The next major blow came from an unexpected source. The local newspaper, which had previously written favorable stories about Marcus's developments and charitable work, published an editorial calling for a full investigation into his business practices. The editorial was written by someone Marcus had never met, a columnist known for populist rhetoric and anti-business sentiment. It was filled with insinuations but no facts, suggestions but no evidence. But it was in the newspaper, which gave it a veneer of credibility. Marcus's team was devastated. Jennifer came into his office close to tears.
They're supposed to be journalists. They're supposed to investigate before they publish.
How can they write this without any proof? Marcus had learned something important during this ordeal. Traditional media wasn't much different from social media anymore. Both were driven by engagement, by emotion, by controversy. Truth was secondary to what generated attention.
It's okay, Marcus told Jennifer. Let them write their editorials. We have groundbreaking ceremonies to plan. The groundbreaking ceremony for the community center was scheduled for the following week.
Marcus's team suggested postponing it, worried that protesters might show up or that media coverage would be negative. Marcus refused to postpone. He had made a promise to the community, and he kept his promises regardless of what was being said about him. The day of the ceremony arrived. Marcus expected a small crowd, maybe some protesters, definitely hostile media. What he got shocked everyone. Over 500 people showed up. Community members, business owners, families who would benefit from the new center. They came with signs, but not the kind Marcus's critics expected. Thank you, Marcus. We believe in you. Actions speak louder than words. As Marcus stood at the podium, looking at the crowd, he realized something profound. While the media and social media had been tearing him apart, real people, the ones actually affected by his work, had been paying attention to what mattered. They didn't care about anonymous accusations. They cared that Marcus was building something that would help their children, strengthen their neighborhood, and create opportunities. An elderly woman approached the microphone during the community comment period. Mrs. Rodriguez, ironically sharing a last name with Marcus's rival, had lived in the neighborhood for 50 years. She had watched it decline, watched opportunities leave, watched young people move away because there was nothing for them. I want to say something about Mr. Backdom, Chen, she began, her voice strong despite her age. I don't know anything about business deals or city permits or whatever people are saying on the internet. What I know is this. When everyone else forgot about our neighborhood, when politicians made promises they never kept, when other developers wanted to tear down our homes to build luxury condos, Mr. Chen came here. He asked us what we needed. He listened, and now he's building it. I don't care what strangers say about him. I care about what he does. And what he does is help people. The crowd erupted in applause. Several people wiped away tears. The moment was captured by news cameras, but it didn't get as much coverage as the controversies had. Positive news never did, but it didn't matter. The people who mattered had seen it. The people whose lives Marcus's work actually touched knew the truth. After the ceremony, as Marcus mingled with community members, he saw Thomas Rodriguez in the distance. Thomas had shown up, perhaps hoping to see Marcus embarrassed or protested against. Instead, he had witnessed the opposite, a community rallying around Marcus. Their eyes met across the crowd. Thomas looked away and left quickly. The defeat was complete, even though Marcus had never engaged in battle. That evening, Marcus sat in his office reflecting on the past month. He opened his laptop and looked at the social media posts about him. They were still there, still negative, still full of accusations, but something had changed. The comment sections were different now. More people were pushing back, asking for evidence, pointing out that real investigations had found nothing. The tide was turning, not because Marcus had defended himself, but because he had continued to prove himself through action. He received a call from Richard Santos, the board member. Marcus, I wanted you to know something. I made some calls today. 3 major investors are interested in replacing the capital you're losing. They saw the coverage of the community ceremony. They're impressed by how you handled this situation. They see leadership, not weakness. Thanks, Richard. But I wasn't handling a situation. I was just living my life. That's exactly why they're impressed, Richard replied. Everyone else in your position would have been screaming on social media, holding press conferences, suing everyone in sight. You just kept building. That takes a special kind of strength. After hanging up, Marcus thought about strength and what it really meant. Most people thought strength meant fighting back, hitting harder, never backing down from a confrontation. But that wasn't strength. That was reaction. Real strength was internal. It was the ability to maintain your course regardless of external pressures. It was the confidence to know your worth without needing external validation. It was the discipline to focus on what you could control and release what you couldn't. His phone buzzed with a message from his daughter Sophie. "Dad, my friend's mom said she saw you on the news at the ceremony. She said you're a good man. I told her I already knew that. Love you." Marcus felt his eyes water slightly. This was what mattered. Not headlines, not social media trends, not the opinions of strangers, the respect of people who actually knew him, the impact he made on real lives, the example he set for his daughter. He closed his laptop and decided he was done looking at media coverage. He had work to do. 3 new proposals needed reviewing. The affordable housing project needed final approvals. A local school had requested a meeting about a potential scholarship program. These were the things that mattered. These were the things that would define his legacy long after every rumor and accusation had been forgotten. As Marcus left his office that night, he passed a framed quote on his wall that he had installed years ago but had never fully appreciated until now. It was from Marcus Aurelius. "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." For the first time in his life, Marcus truly understood what that meant. The power wasn't in controlling what people said about him. It was in controlling how he responded to what they said. And his response was simple: keep building, keep serving, keep living according to his principles. Everything else was just noise, and powerful men didn't flinch at noise. 6 months had passed since the rumors first erupted. The landscape had changed dramatically, though not in the way Marcus's critics had hoped. The affordable housing project was now half completed, providing homes for 200 families. The community centre had its ribbon-cutting ceremony with the mayor and 3 city council members in attendance, all praising Marcus's commitment to the neighbourhood. His company had landed 2 new major contracts, and the 3 new city expansions were ahead of schedule. The rumours, meanwhile, had faded to whispers. They hadn't disappeared entirely. Rumours never truly die on the internet, but they had lost their power. What had seemed like an unstoppable wave of controversy 6 months ago was now reduced to occasional mentions by people with too much time and too little credibility. Marcus was in his office reviewing quarterly reports when Jennifer buzzed him. "There's a reporter here to see you, Rachel Morrison from the Tribune. She says she's been investigating the allegations against you." Marcus sighed. He assumed it was another hit piece. "Send her in." Rachel Morrison was younger than he expected, probably in her early 30s, with sharp eyes that suggested intelligence and skepticism in equal measure. She sat down without small talk and pulled out a notebook. "Mr. Chen, I've spent the last 5 months investigating every allegation made against you," she began. "I've reviewed hundreds of documents, interviewed dozens of sources, examined every project your company has completed, and spoken with city officials, contractors, employees, and community members." He had learned patience during this ordeal. "I found nothing," Rachel continued. "Not a single shred of evidence supporting any of the accusations. In fact, I found the opposite. Every project was completed to code, often exceeding requirements. Every permit was obtained legally. Every payment was documented. Your company has one of the cleanest records I've ever seen in this industry." "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus asked. "'Cause I'm writing a story about it. About how a coordinated campaign of lies nearly destroyed a good man's reputation. About how social media and lazy journalism can ruin someone without evidence. About how easy it is to accuse and how hard it is to defend. But mostly about how you responded or didn't respond." "You want to know why I stayed silent?" Marcus said. "Everyone wants to know. You became famous for your silence. Other people in your position would have hired PR firms, held press conferences, sued for defamation. You did none of that. Why?" He had asked himself this question many times, trying to understand his own instincts. "Have you ever watched someone try to punch smoke?" he finally asked. Rachel looked confused. "What do you mean?" "Rumors are like smoke. They seem real. They seem dangerous. They seem like something you need to fight. But if you try to punch smoke, your fist goes right through it. You can't grab it, can't contain it, can't defeat it through direct confrontation. The only way to clear smoke is to open a window and let fresh air in." "And the fresh air was your work," Rachel said, understanding. "Exactly." "I couldn't defeat lies by arguing against them. People who believe rumors aren't interested in facts. They're interested in the narrative. So instead of fighting their narrative, I created my own through action. Every building we completed, Every family we housed, every job we created was a window opening. Eventually, the smoke cleared on its own. Rachel scribbled notes furiously. But it must have been difficult. Having your reputation attacked, your integrity questioned. How did you maintain your composure? Marcus thought about the sleepless nights, the moments of doubt, the times he wanted to scream at the unfairness of it all. It wasn't easy. But I realized something early on. The people attacking me didn't know me. They didn't know my work, my character, my history. They knew a story, a convenient villain they could project their own frustrations onto. How could I defend myself against something that wasn't really about me? I would have been fighting a phantom. So you let your work speak for you. I let my work speak, period. Not for me, not against them, just speak. Buildings are here. The families living in affordable housing are real. The community center serving hundreds of kids every day exists. Those facts don't need me to defend them. They defend themselves. Rachel paused, studying Marcus carefully. There's something else I discovered during my investigation. The person who started the rumors, Thomas Rodriguez, he's facing some serious problems now. 2 of his major projects failed inspections. He's being investigated for actual bribery charges. It's like karma caught up with him. Marcus felt no satisfaction hearing this. He had stopped thinking about Thomas months ago. I hope he gets a fair investigation. Everyone deserves that. You're serious? Rachel asked, surprised. Completely. I don't wish failure on anyone, even someone who tried to destroy me. Thomas made his choices and he'll face the consequences of those choices. But that's between him and his own conscience. It has nothing to do with me. Rachel shook her head slowly. You're a rare person, Mr. Chen. Most people would be celebrating their enemy's downfall. He was never my enemy, Marcus said simply. He was a competitor who made poor choices. An enemy is someone you think about, someone who occupies space in your mind and heart. Thomas never had that space. The moment I gave him that space, he would have won. The interview lasted another 30 minutes. Rachel asked about specific projects, about Marcus's philosophy on business and life, about what he had learned from the experience. When she finally left, she promised the article would run the following week. True to her word, the article appeared on the front page of the Sunday Tribune. The headline read, "The Man Who Won by Not Fighting. How Marcus Chen's Silence Defeated a Campaign of Lies." It was thorough, fair, and devastating to Marcus's critics. It exposed the coordinated effort to destroy him, traced the rumors back to their source, and most importantly, documented every successful project Marcus had completed while under attack. The article went viral, but in a different way than the rumors had. It sparked conversations about media responsibility, the dangers of social media mob mentality, and the power of integrity over image. Several other news outlets picked up the story, and suddenly Marcus was being praised for the same silence that had been criticized months earlier. His phone exploded with interview requests, speaking invitations, and congratulations. Everyone wanted a piece of him now that he was vindicated. Marcus declined most of them. He had learned that media attention, whether positive or negative, was fleeting and ultimately meaningless. The work mattered. Everything else was distraction. However, he did accept one invitation. A local business school asked him to speak to their MBA students about leadership and crisis management. Marcus saw value in teaching the next generation something important. Standing in front of 200 eager business students, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility. These young people were the future leaders, entrepreneurs, and decision-makers. What he told them now might shape how they handled their own challenges years from now. Today I want to talk about power, Marcus began. Not the kind of power you might think, not market power or negotiating power or political power. I want to talk about the power of self-mastery. He told them his story, not as a victim, but as a case study. He explained the psychology behind his decisions, the principles that guided him, the moments of doubt he experienced, and the lessons he learned. The world will tell you that power comes from control, he continued. Control over markets, over people, over narratives. But real power comes from not needing to control those things. It comes from being so secure in who you are and what you do that external opinions become irrelevant. A student raised her hand. But Mr. Chen, doesn't that approach only work if you're actually innocent? What if someone is guilty of what they're accused of? Excellent question, Marcus replied. You're right. My approach worked because I had nothing to hide. But here's the thing. If you're building your life and business on solid ethical foundations from the beginning, you'll never be in a position where someone can credibly destroy you with lies. The best defense against accusations is to live in a way where accusations don't stick, because everyone who actually knows your work knows they can't be true. Another student asked, "What about the emotional toll? How did you deal with distress?" Marcus nodded. "I won't lie to you. It was hard. There were nights I couldn't sleep, days I wanted to give up. But I had something that kept me going. Purpose. I wasn't building buildings for my ego. I was housing families, creating jobs, strengthening communities. That purpose was bigger than my reputation. When you're driven by purpose rather than ego, it's easier to weather attacks on your ego." He paused, looking at the young faces before him. "Let me tell you what I learned about criticism during those 6 months. There are 2 types of critics in life. The first type criticizes you because they care about the work and want you to improve. These critics are valuable. They point out real flaws, offer constructive feedback, and want you to succeed. The second type criticizes you because criticizing is easier than building. These critics don't want you to improve. They want you to fail because your success makes them uncomfortable. It reminds them of what they haven't accomplished. How do you tell the difference?" a student asked. "Simple. Constructive critics offer specifics and solutions. They say, here's what's wrong and here's how to fix it. Destructive critics offer only condemnation. They say, you're terrible, but never explain what you should do differently. Constructive critics want to see you succeed. Destructive critics want to see you fail. Once you understand which type you're dealing with, you know whether to listen or ignore." The lecture continued for another hour. Marcus shared frameworks for decision-making under pressure, strategies for maintaining focus during chaos, and principles for building resilient organizations. But the core message remained constant. Power isn't about controlling external forces, it's about mastering internal ones. After the lecture, several students approached Marcus with questions. One young man who introduced himself as James waited until the others had left. "Jen, can I ask you something personal?" James began hesitantly. "Of course. I'm starting my own company. It's small. Nothing like yours. But there's this other entrepreneur in my space who keeps bad-mouthing me to potential investors, spreading rumors, trying to freeze me out. I want to fight back, to expose him, to defend myself. But after hearing you speak, I'm wondering if that's the wrong approach." Marcus saw himself in this young man, ambitious, capable, but facing obstacles that seemed insurmountable. "James, let me ask you this. When you lie awake at night thinking about your business, what do you think about? Your competitor and his lies, or your product and your customers?" James thought for a moment. "Honestly, lately it's been more about him than my work." There's your answer. He's already winning because he's occupying your mental space. The moment you start building your business around what he's doing or saying, you've lost. You're letting him set the agenda. Instead, become so focused on building something great that you literally forget he exists. But what if investors believe him? And then they weren't the right investors for you. Investors worth having do their own due diligence. They don't make decisions based on gossip. If an investor believes rumors without investigating, they're not someone you want as a partner anyway. The right investors will find you based on your work, not on what someone else says about you. James nodded slowly, absorbing this. It's hard to let go of the need to defend yourself. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do, Marcus agreed. We're conditioned to respond to attacks, to defend our territory, to prove critics wrong. But that conditioning often hurts us more than helps us. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is absolutely nothing except keep building. Marcus shared resources, offered to review James's business plan, and gave him his assistant's contact information. As James left, Marcus felt satisfaction that had nothing to do with vindication or success. He had potentially changed the trajectory of a young entrepreneur's life by sharing hard-won wisdom that mattered more than any headline. Walking to his car later that evening, Marcus reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. He had been tested in ways he never expected. Not tested in his business acumen or technical skills, those had always been strong. He had been tested in his character, his patience, his ability to maintain integrity under pressure, and he had passed. That the grade he cared about wasn't from media or public opinion. It was from himself. His phone rang. It was his mother, calling from Florida. "Marcus, I saw the article in the Tribune. Everyone here is talking about it. I'm so proud of you. Thanks, Mom. Your father would have been proud too. Do you remember what he used to say? The bamboo that bends in the storm survives, but the oak that tries to stand firm breaks. You were like bamboo. You bent but didn't break. Marcus smiled. He had always thought of his father's metaphor as about weakness, about yielding. But he understood it differently now. Bending wasn't weakness. It was flexibility, adaptability, the wisdom to know which battles to fight and which to avoid. The oak stood firm because of ego, because it needed to prove its strength. The bamboo bent because it was secure enough not to need that proof. Yeah, Mum, I finally understand what he meant. That night, as Marcus sat in his home office, he opened his journal one last time to document this chapter of his life. He wrote about the accusations, the responses, the resolution, but mostly, he wrote about the lessons, not for anyone else to read, but for himself to remember. Power isn't about dominance. It's about discipline. It's not about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself. It's not about winning every battle. It's about choosing which battles matter. Real power is the ability to face chaos with calm, criticism with confidence, and lies with truth, not in words, but in action. The world will test you. People will attack you. Competitors will try to destroy you. The media will sensationalize you. Social media will judge you. But none of that matters if you remain anchored to your principles, focused on your purpose, and committed to your work. Let them talk. Let them gossip. Let them attack. While they're talking, you're building. While they're gossiping, you're creating. While they're attacking, you're serving. And in the end, results speak louder than any critic ever could. The moment you understand this, truly understand it, is the moment you become unshakable. Not because you're immune to criticism, but because you're no longer dependent on approval. Not because attacks don't hurt, but because your purpose is bigger than your pain. Not because you've silenced your critics, but because you've learned the most powerful response is often no response at all. This is the Machiavellian response people misunderstand. Machiavelli didn't teach ruthlessness. He taught pragmatism. He taught that the appearance of weakness can be a strategy, that sometimes the best way to win is to make your enemy think you're not even playing. When you don't flinch, don't react, don't engage, you rob your critics of the fight they're seeking. You become a mirror, reflecting their rage back at them until they exhaust themselves. But the deepest lesson is this: you only have the luxury of not flinching when you're standing on solid ground. You can ignore critics when you know in your heart that their criticisms are baseless. You can maintain silence when your work speaks volumes. You can stay calm when your conscience is clear. So the real work isn't learning not to flinch. The real work is building a life where you have nothing to flinch about. Everything else is just performance. Marcus closed his journal and looked out his window at the city he had helped build, one project at a time. Lights twinkled in the community center where kids were playing basketball. Families were settling into the affordable housing units, creating homes and memories. Workers were putting in overtime on the new development, earning good wages and building careers. This was his legacy. Not the headlines, not the drama, not even the vindication. This was what mattered. The tangible impact on real lives. The critics who had attacked him 6 months ago would forget about him eventually. But the families living in his buildings, the kids using the community center, the employees supporting their families, they would remember. Not him necessarily, but what he built. And that was enough. In the end, Marcus had learned that true power isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to defend itself. It simply exists, steady and unmovable, while the noise of critics fades into irrelevance. Like his father had always said, lions don't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. Not because lions are superior, but because lions know who they are. They don't need sheep to validate their strength. Marcus Chen had become that lion, not through aggression or dominance, but through the quiet confidence that comes from living with integrity, building with purpose, and responding to chaos with calculated calm. He had learned the ultimate Machiavellian lesson. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is absolutely nothing except keep being excellent at what you do. And while his critics had talked, he had built an empire, not of buildings and businesses, though those existed, but an empire of respect, impact, and meaning. That was the empire that would last long after every rumor, every headline, and every criticism had been forgotten. That was the empire that mattered. As Marcus turned off his office light and headed home to his daughter, he felt something he hadn't felt in 6 months. Not relief, not vindication, but peace. The peace that comes from knowing you handled a crisis the right way, not the easy way. The peace that comes from maintaining your integrity when it would have been easier to compromise it. The peace that comes from letting your work speak for you instead of constantly speaking for yourself. Let them talk, he thought one final time. While they talk, I'll build. And in the end, builders always outlast talkers.